So this presentation tonight is titled Helping Children Cope with Stress. Our presenting providers are licensed social worker and associate director of behavioral health for IHA Medical Group, Kristyn Spangler, and licensed social worker and behavioral health manager for IHA Medical Group, Elise McNulty.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us. When bad things happen in our lives or in the world at large, it can be difficult to know how to cope. As adults, we're also faced with the task of helping younger ones in our lives to understand the process and understand both daily and extreme events. We understand that as parents and caregivers, we want to protect our children from stress and trauma, but unfortunately, it's impossible to shield them from all of the challenges and tragedies of the world. This evening, we will provide parents and caregivers with a better understanding of how children experience stress and the impact that tragedies can have on their mental health and well-being. Our focus includes exploring the various ways in which children experience stress and how it can impact their emotional, cognitive, and behavioral development. Understanding the unique challenges that tragedies such as natural disasters, violence, or loss can pose for children. And discussing effective communication and behavioral interventions, such as mindfulness practices, that parents can use to support their children's mental health and well-being. We hope that by the end of the webinar, you'll feel more equipped to provide a safe and supportive environment for your children to grow and thrive. Next slide. Thank you. We want to support our children through life's challenges, and it can be difficult to know how to help when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Let's start by considering the different kinds of pressure and stress that children can experience. There are academic pressures. Children may feel pressure to perform well in school, get good grades, and excel in extracurricular activities. This can come from parents or teachers or even from within. We also want to consider social pressures. Children may feel the need to fit in with their peers, to conform to social norms, or to achieve a certain level of popularity. Social media can amplify these pressures, making children feel like they must present a perfect image to the world. Families sometimes experience events or phases that can be troubling to young people. Children may experience stress due to conflicts or changes within the family, such as divorce, moving to a new home, or financial difficulties. Children may also feel pressure to meet their parents' expectation or to take on adult responsibilities. Children who are struggling with mental health issues, such as anxiety or depression, may feel isolated, misunderstood, or ashamed. They may also feel stigma or discrimination from peers or society at large. Similarly, children who are dealing with a medical illness may feel scared, confused, or overwhelmed by the changes in their body or routine. They may also experience social isolation or bullying due to their condition. External stressors, such as natural disasters, community violence, or other traumatic events, may not be predictable, and we can expect that they will happen. These events can have a significant impact on children's mental health and well-being. While news and social media can be important sources of information and connection, they can also exacerbate stressors for children. It's hard to escape the constant input of opinion, judgment, danger, and curated standards. Media, whether news, reality shows, or social media, amplifies the volume and intensity of burdens that children already experience. Young people compare themselves to others and seek validation or affirmation. And often what is presented is processed through scripting and filters that distort reality. During times of crisis or public tragedy, children may feel pressure to express a certain opinion or to present themselves in certain ways online, which can be incredibly stressful. Lacking sophisticated reasoning or guidance from a caring adult, Young people may be misled or confused by the way some people assign cause and blame. Trolls can make social media a dangerous place for children in a few ways. Trolls are individuals who intentionally post inflammatory or offensive comments online in order to provoke a reaction. For children, trolls can be especially harmful because they often target vulnerable or marginalized groups, such as individuals with mental health or physical disabilities, members of the LGBTQ+ community, or people of color. Trolls may use derogatory language or slurs, spread false information or rumors, or engage in cyberbullying. While troll behavior is challenging for all of us, young people lack the perspective and experience to process purposeful instigation. Media often focuses on urgency of news and pushes sensational stories. Graphic images and descriptions can be upsetting, even more so when unsolicited or unexpected, and it can lead to intrusive thoughts, negative self-view, and emotional disturbances. Trusted sources of news and media that provide connection and entertainment are valuable to young people, and as caregivers, we must monitor the information and attitudes in media that could complicate emotional, cognitive, and behavioral changes. And while there are many types of stress that children may experience, public tragedies are especially difficult for them to process. High-profile tragedies can include tornadoes, building fires, deaths from violent encounters, military or police actions, or a large crash. These tragedies can be sudden, unexpected, and deeply disturbing. Some tragedies hit closer to home than others. And moreover, public tragedies can disrupt children's routines, such as school closures, changes in transportation, or increased security measures. This can be unsettling and disruptive for children who thrive on structure and predictability. Even if parents try to shield their children from the media coverage, it can be difficult to prevent children from hearing about the tragedy from their peers or through social media. We can expect that children are likely to be exposed to graphic images or news coverage of the tragedy, or hear about it from their peers, which can be overwhelming and traumatizing due to the nature of how children portray and understand events. Children may talk about the tragedy with their friends and share information or opinions that can be confusing or upsetting, and it leads to a kind of echo chamber effect where children are repeatedly exposed to the information and opinions that can exacerbate the stress and anxiety. And tragedies can impact children even if they are not directly involved or in harm's way. The exposure to tragic events through media or social networks can have a profound impact on a child's mental health and well-being. Even if this child is not physically affected by the tragedy, they may experience emotional, cognitive, or behavioral reactions that can be distressing. A child may feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information and images they are exposed to through social media or the news cycle. They may struggle to make sense of what they are seeing or hearing, or feel confused or frightened by conflicting opinions and the narratives they encounter. Additionally, exposure to tragedy can trigger traumatic memories or experiences from child's own past, even if those experiences are unrelated to the current event. For example, a child who has experienced bullying or past abuse may become more fearful or withdrawn in response to news of a school shooting or an act of violence. We know tragedies can have a significant impact on children's mental health and well-being. When a public tragedy occurs, such as a natural disaster, act of violence, global pandemic, children may experience a range of emotions which manifest in several ways. They may struggle to make sense of what is happening and may feel a sense of loss or grief, even if they are not directly affected by the event. Because tragedies can disrupt children's daily routines, these events can make it difficult for young folks to feel safe and secure. Emotional reactions may include feelings of sadness, fear, anger, or anxiety. And children may also feel numb, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their emotions. Cognitive reactions may include difficulty concentrating, confusion, or preoccupation with thoughts about the tragedy. Children may also have trouble understanding what has happened, or may have questions or concerns that they are struggling to express. Behavioral reactions may include changes in appetite, sleep patterns, or activity levels. Children may become irritable, withdrawn, or clingy, may exhibit regressive behavior such as bedwetting or thumb sucking, and they may also engage in risk-taking behavior such as drug or alcohol use as a way of coping with their emotions. Children of different ages can be impacted differently by the stress of tragedies. Infants and toddlers may not have the ability to understand what is happening, but they can still sense the stress and anxiety of the adults or older children around them. They may become more clingy or fussy, or experience changes in sleep and eating patterns. Preschoolers may be more aware of what is happening, but may struggle to understand the full scope of the event. They may have difficulty separating reality from fantasy, and may have fears of imaginary monsters or creatures. They may also regress to behaviors they had outgrown, such as bedwetting or thumb sucking. School-age children may have a greater understanding of the event and may have questions or concerns about what has happened. They may also become more anxious about their own safety or the safety of their loved ones. Children in this age group may also feel a sense of guilt or responsibility for what has happened, even if they were not directly involved. Teenagers may have a more complex understanding of the event and may be exposed to a greater amount of information and opinions through social media and news. They may be more likely to experience feelings of anger, cynicism, or hopelessness, and may become more socially withdrawn or isolated. Teenagers may also be more likely to engage in risk-taking behaviors as a way of coping with their emotions. Well, now that we have a better understanding of how stress and tragedies can impact children, we're going to explore ways that parents can help their children cope. For our own health and that of our children, it's important to remember that there is hope. As parents and caregivers, we have the ability to help our children build resilience, develop healthy coping strategies, and navigate difficult experiences. Children are resilient and adaptable, and with the right support, they can overcome even the most difficult challenges. By modeling healthy coping strategies and providing consistent emotional support, we can help our children develop the skills they need to thrive, both now and in the future.
So like Kristyn was saying, we live in a society where media is pretty much everywhere we turn. Making a conscious effort to be aware of those inputs and limit exposure can be a helpful measure. Check in with your child about what they are seeing and hearing and where their information is coming from. We can help them understand that not all information that is available through media is actually accurate information. Spend time together looking at apps on devices and deciding which might not be helpful sources, even if that means just a temporary pause from those apps. We all know that it can be easy to lose time when engaging with social media or apps on our phones or devices, and the more time that we spend, the more exposed we are to those stressful inputs. Using time limits can be helpful. There was a study done earlier this year that showed that limiting all social media consumption to 60 minutes per day or less showed significant improvement in anxiety symptoms and perspectives. So we know that setting those limits can be helpful. Having those conversations with our young ones about why and how they can be helpful can help us work towards setting those. Sometimes it can be hard to put what we're feeling into words. This is true at any age, but can be especially true for our younger children. Encouraging expression through play or other creative outlets can be a way to process through some of those feelings. It can also be an avenue to engage in a difficult discussion at a level that feels accessible. Ask questions about the game your young one is playing or acting out. Ask them to tell you about the painting or picture they drew. You can get a feeling for where their thoughts and feelings are at, and then navigate a discussion about those feelings in a way that places an emphasis on safety. Most of all, validating that their feelings and expressions are real and okay to talk about. It might seem counterintuitive, but setting aside specific time to engage in or discuss worries can actually be quite helpful. Worry time helps children and adults understand that they can set aside time for their brain to worry, and this frees up the rest of their day and bedtime for more helpful, relaxing thoughts. Journaling can be a useful tool in getting worries outside of us without having to speak them. It aids in exploration of alternatives to anxious thoughts. Using a journal does not have to really be any kind of specific format and can be whatever feels most useful. Some people like to use journal prompts, while others like to use the space to detail the day's events, and still others might use the space to process specific situations or thoughts. There's strong evidence that the actual act of writing itself can reduce stress. Encouraging kids to write even just a few sentences about how they're feeling can be a way for them to get their feelings into words and also give an insight into what they're thinking and feeling. Communication is hard. Communicating with children about things that are difficult to understand is even harder. You might actually wonder if it would be better to just avoid saying anything at all. Being silent won't protect kids from what happened, but it can protect them from being able to understand and cope. When we communicate, we show that we care. We want to remember that the amount of detail that we include in those communications will be dependent on the age and maturity level, as well as the personality of the child. You're going to want to provide basic information and facts in very simplified terms. Allow space for questions and know that it's okay to express that you don't have the answer in the moment, and that's okay. Most of all, children and teens want to know that someone that they trust will listen to and validate their feelings. Of course, we want to provide reassurance whenever possible, and this can feel difficult in situations where even as adults, we're questioning things like safety. An example of a statement you might use with your kid might be something like, our government, police, and schools are taking steps to protect us from something like this happening again. Of course, you can also look online for helpful resources. There's lots of them available. We've linked a resource here that provides tips and tools for talking to children about school and community shootings. And I think when Allison sends the slides out with the presentation, you'll be able to access that link. When we're talking about feelings, it's important that we remember that anger is just as valid as any other feeling. Anger often feels like a challenging emotion because of how it can be expressed. When we're dealing with difficult or tragic situations, it can be normal to feel angry about it. It's important that we remember that all feelings, including anger, are a valid part of our experiences. We can validate those angry feelings while at the same time providing support and helpful tools for managing those feelings. Some of the tools we discussed in the previous slides, such as journaling or creative expression, can be a positive outlet for those feelings. This is a really short video that we're going to share from the American Academy of Pediatrics with some more tips on talking with kids.
After any disaster, where people are killed or injured, whether that's a shooting or attack, a natural disaster like a hurricane, or another event in which people are hurt, parents and other adults may struggle with what they should and should not share with children. The American Academy of Pediatrics encourages parents and anyone who works closely with children to filter information about the crisis and present it in a way that children can cope with. No matter what age or developmental stage your child is, you can start by asking your child what they've already heard. After listening, ask what questions they have. When talking to a child of any age, it's a good idea to be frank, but to avoid graphic or unnecessary details. If you have young children, keep them away from repetitive graphic images and sounds that may appear in the media, on television, and on social media. But do talk to them about what happened and don't be too vague. Simply saying people got hurt far away from here doesn't tell a child what happened or why it's being discussed so much. Children as young as 4 years old will hear about major events and will want accurate information. Older children, teens, and young adults might ask more questions and benefit from more information. With older children, it's a good idea to watch the news with them. Stop, pause, and have discussions when needed. Consider that most older children have access to the news and graphic images through their cell phones. You need to be aware of what's out there and take steps in advance to talk to children about what they might hear or see. The underlying message for a parent to convey is, it's okay if these things bother you. We are here to support each other. Finally, you know your own child best. Signs that a child isn't dealing with a disaster well can include sleep problems, complaints about physical pain, behavior problems, and emotional distress. Don't wait for the signs. Start the discussion early. If you have concerns, talk with your pediatrician. For more information, visit healthychildren.org. After any
So there's things that we can do together at home to help manage acute stress and navigate difficult conversations. And we also know that sometimes we need to reach out for more help. If you notice that the stress or reaction is feeling persistent or is not improving over time, if you notice things like persistent sadness, intense worry that is interfering with daily functioning, excessive reassurance seeking, or that your child is too anxious or distressed to engage in or enjoy normal daily activities, these can be signs that extra support is warranted. However, you know your child and yourself best, and if you feel that you aren't sure or you're concerned about your child's well-being, it is always a good idea to reach out to their pediatrician or primary care physician to discuss. When we're thinking about tools to help with managing stress and anxiety, mindfulness is one that can be applicable to almost any age or situation. Of course, you've probably heard of mindfulness practice in recent years as there's been more discussion around it and its effectiveness. But what is it really? Mindfulness is a practice that typically begins on focusing on breath and paying attention to the present moment without judgment. Your immediate reaction might be, my brain is too busy, or I'm just too distracted to do something like this. Of course, our brains are busy and full of thoughts. That's what they're meant to do. But through mindfulness, we can train it to focus more on the thoughts that we want to and less on the distressing thoughts and feelings. Even little moments of mindfulness throughout your day can add up to big improvements. Any moment that we can take our thoughts out of the past or future and focus on the moment can be beneficial. There was a 2003 study of young children in New York where they brought these mindfulness teachers and tools into the classroom, and the study showed a significant reduction in anxiety and behavior problems for those children who did nothing else changed other than they were engaging in a regular mindfulness practice. When we're speaking with children about mindfulness, it probably feels a little bit difficult to explain, or it might be difficult for them to understand. With younger children especially, it might be more helpful to explain mindfulness as finding a quiet, still place. Some ideas for using mindfulness with young children can look like practicing intentional deep breathing or focusing on five senses. We want to keep it pretty basic, encouraging them to identify what they're seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, or smelling in the moment helps to bring them out of their thoughts and back into this present moment. There's a lot of apps that have guided exercises and activities, and these can be a really useful tool. We have a short clip of a mindfulness exercise that might be a good fit for young children, and we found this on YouTube.
Rainbow relaxation. In this mindfulness practice, you will be stretching your muscles and breathing deeply. You can sit up straight or stand, but make sure you have some space at either side of you, as we will be raising our arms in the air. Make sure you're comfortable. Today, we are going to imagine that we are painting a rainbow in the sky, and your fingers are the paintbrushes. Start with your hands by your side and your palms facing forwards. Now, when you see the red band of the rainbow start to appear, keep your arms straight and trace it upwards with your paintbrushes. Great! Now the red band is painted, slowly bring your arms back down by your sides. Now you need to match your breathing to your painting. So when you raise your hands up for the next color, take a big breath in, and you can breathe out when you bring your arms back down. Get ready for the orange to appear. Imagine we have dipped our paintbrushes into orange paint. So breathe in and lift the arms up, and slowly back down as you breathe out. Now we're going to paint the yellow band. Imagine we have dipped our paintbrushes into the yellow paint. Breathe in as we paint the yellow band, and lift your arms up. Now breathe out as you drop your arms down. Now the green band. Breathe in as we paint the green band, arms up, and breathe out as you drop your arms down. Now the blue band. Breathe in as we paint the blue band, arms up, and breathe out as you bring your arms back down. Now the indigo band. Breathe in as we paint the indigo band, arms up, and breathe out as you bring your arms back down. And now for the final color, violet. Breathe in and lift your arms up, and breathe out as your arms come down. Well done.
Mindfulness with teens can look a little bit different. And of course, we can take that practice a little bit further, make it a little bit more complex, but it still doesn't have to be complicated. The basics tend to be the same, focusing on deep breathing, using your senses, tuning into movements, or using guided meditation. In this slide, we list the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. And essentially that's going through your 5 senses, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, something you can taste. Again, the idea here is really bringing oneself out of their thoughts and focusing or grounding themselves in the present moment. There's also mindful walk or movement, again, focusing on the feelings in your body as you're walking or moving, and kind of what's happening around you in the moment. And again, apps can be a really useful guide. We have another short clip of a video that is maybe more teen appropriate. Again, we found this on YouTube. There's lots of stuff out there that's useful. This one's 4 minutes. We're not going to listen to the whole thing.
Let's begin by settling into our seats, finding some comfort and ease. You're welcome to soften your gaze or close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Notice what your body needs. As you settle into a supportive posture, bring a gentle awareness to how you're feeling right now. Does the mind feel busy, excited, calm, or any other way? Our minds are constantly working hard for us, and when there's a lot going on, it can feel like big waves that we're trying to surf. So, we're going to practice surfing the waves with our breath. Take one hand out in front of you, spreading the fingers wide. Using one finger on the other hand to trace the handprint of the extended hand. Imagine you are tracing your handprint, following one finger up and down each individual finger. Let's repeat a few times. Tracing your handprint, following one finger up and down each individual finger. Now, as you travel up the side of a finger, take a breath in. And as you travel down that finger, take a breath out. Up the side of the finger, breath in. Down that finger, breath out. Continue this journey of tracing the fingers, breathing in as the finger travels up the hand, breathing out as the finger travels down. When you make it to the end of your hand and you're exhaling out, add a sound as if you're surfing gently up to shore.
All right, so you kind of get the point with that. Again, using the breath, kind of pulling the attention forward.
With each.
So what about the rest of us? How can we help our kids manage their anxiety and stress if we're struggling ourselves? We know that it's important to work towards management of these feelings so that we can model this behavior for our young ones. Of course, we want to normalize that everyone has feelings and all feelings are valid, but by being calm, we can also provide reassurance during these difficult conversations. The same things that can be helpful for the younger ones in our lives can also be helpful for us. We can and should be mindful of our own media consumption and the impact that it has on our mood and stress. We can set limits for how much and what media we are consuming. You might notice that reading the news is less overwhelming or stressful than listening to or watching it. We get to choose how we consume that and when. You may need to take a pause from news media altogether, and that's fine too. Our days can be so busy and full of demands and pressures. Creating space in your day or week for intentional relaxation can help to give your body and brain a break. This can look like quiet time for meditation or mindfulness, reading, writing, or really anything that you personally find to be relaxing and enjoyable. And of course, we want to make sure that we are utilizing our own support systems, whether it be friends or family, a therapist, or your primary care provider. Reaching out for support and help for yourself can be an integral part of supporting our young ones. A pretty recent study with adults showed that mindfulness practice can be just as effective in managing anxiety as some of the first-line medications that we often use. Evidence shows that mindfulness practice can reduce worry and rumination, reduce stress and emotional reactivity, and improve focus and working memory. Got some ideas here on how you can practice mindfulness or kind of integrate that into your day. spending time outside, using positive affirmations, kind of stopping and checking in with your body. Close your eyes, pay attention to how you feel as you start to breathe deeply. What do you feel in your body? What is it telling you? Mindful eating. I know many of us are eating while we're actively participating in many other things often. So, eating in the present moment without, distractions or electronics. Notice how the food feels, tastes. Take some time to enjoy your food and your meals. So what we're hoping that you take away with you tonight is that yes, life is messy and there's hope. We know that stress and anxiety impacts young people as well as adults. We can intervene on the front end by making choices about media consumption. We can continue to intervene by encouraging and modeling communication and coping skills. Seek professional support when you need it. We're here to help you navigate that. So here at Trinity Health IHG Medical Group, we offer a broad spectrum of behavioral health services and support, both for adults and children within the primary care and pediatric settings. You can reach out to your pediatrician or PCP office to discuss what level of support might be right for you. Like I said, there might be a couple of different options. They can help you kind of navigate that and talk about what feels right. You can use the online scheduling, which is in Quicker, and we have a link here for that. Of course, you can call your office and they can help you get connected as well. We also have behavioral health outpatient services through Trinity. Again, there's a phone number here that can help to get you connected and work towards getting an appointment set up. And of course, there's always the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline that you can utilize by just dialing 988.
Hey, thank you so much. So, question, you can now type it into the Q&A feature. Again, that's the two speech bubbles just at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So while we wait for people to drop some questions, and I just want to say, I've never heard the term scheduling worry time. And I just think that's so brilliant. It really makes it feel like you can have control over anxiety, where at least when I'm anxious, it doesn't always feel that way.
I'll throw in that as Elise was sharing about some of the breathing exercises. I did that along with Elise in the videos and could instantly feel more calm and relaxation in my body. Like I could feel that there was just a release. So it's one of my favorite things about the breathing exercises is that I can do them no matter where I am. So I can do this in the middle of my day at my desk. I did it during this meeting, it just takes a couple of seconds. And I teach my kids to do that as well, so that they can, in their classroom, on their way to school, wherever they are, nobody has to know that they are doing a mindfulness or grounding exercise. They can just take that, 20 seconds for a couple of deep breaths.
Yeah, that's so true. And really, there isn't much like a deep breath. Right, when you need one, especially, they do make a huge difference, I would say personally for me. Okay, I'm gonna pull a couple questions here if that's okay. So I wanted to ask about, you talk about what to say to kids when a tragedy occurs, but how about when there's a potential tragedy? So I know that active shooter drills are now a thing, schools like fire drills or tornado drills were when I was growing up. So if a child comes home a little bit fearful just about the drill, do you have some tips on how you can talk about that with them and maybe give them a little bit of
I think it's important, first to kind of just check in and get a feel for what that experience was like for them. Ask them what questions they have about kind of what happened. My kids have come home and, had questions about, is this going to happen? What happens if, we're in the coat room and, something else happens. And so, really trying to calmly just answer those questions as best I can. If I don't have the answers, I might say, like, let's check with your teacher about, how that might work, because I'm not sure, I don't have the answers for how that's going to play out in your school. And then, again, I think we can relate some of these, these drills that we do now, the active shooter drills, to things like, a tornado drill. We don't know that a tornado is going to happen. We hope that it never does. And we want to make sure that if it happens, we're prepared and we can keep ourselves and each other safe. And so, just kind of providing that reassurance. We don't want to say that it's never going to happen, because that would feel misleading as well. But really placing that emphasis on safety and the things that we're doing to help in any situation like that.
Thanks, Elise. I was going to add on to that, depending on your young one's development and understanding, like helping them name the feelings that they have. So sometimes, we talked about the creative expression because we can't always use words. So to the extent that we can help our young ones kind of put words to what those feelings are, like confused or scared or worried, that helps as well, so that they can make that connection. And the other thing I'd add is focusing on, there are things that we can control and things we can't control. And by doing that, we are taking some control. We can control how we react. We can control how we prepare. And that helps, because the disasters and things like that are a sense of being out of control and finding places where we do have choices.
That's a great point too. I really like the phrase, I'm doing everything I can, or even with my kids, did you do everything you could do in that moment? And really that is all we can do, right? So do you recommend a daily check-in? Maybe even if your child isn't acting like anything's bothering them, but bedtime's always a great time for me. I don't know about other people, maybe the dinner table. Just, if you say, how was your day? You get like, good, one-word answers, those types of things. Do you have a couple of phrases that might work well for those daily check-ins to make sure your child is able to share their feelings?
I think if we can ask about specific events in the day, it can help to, I think, gather a little bit more information. What's something that made you feel really happy or excited today? Was there anything that made you feel really sad today? What might that have been? Things like that. What was your favorite thing that happened today? What was the worst thing that happened today? Using those open-ended questions to kind of garner that conversation. And you might notice that your young one seems bothered by something and maybe they're not opening up. Offering for another outlet. Do you want to write about it? But also letting them know, if you don't want to talk about it right now, that's okay too. But I'm here if you do.
I love the idea of making that just a normal routine in your household, so that it's not just when something might be troubling, but this is just a regular thing. Like, we just check in, see how we're doing. There's, you could do some creative activities with that as well. So you can look them up. There's plenty of ideas, of course, online, like a check-in you could do that I think even young kids would understand. You might, whether it's at your supper time table, like if you were describing today as a weather report, like what would the weather report be for today? And you can give an example, like it was stormy, or it was windy, or it was sunny. And that helps add some creativity, and maybe even takes a step back, so that it's not as scary to say a feeling word, perhaps, and then you can go from there. Well, that's my other thought.
No, I like where you're going with that. And I love the idea of incorporating some sort of other expression, like writing, as you said, Elise, or like for the little ones. Art has been a really great outlet for my kids anyway. And it is interesting when they have some big emotions, how different their pictures or their drawings or whatever they're doing really come out compared, to very happy, excited versus really angry. And they really do find ways to express themselves in those mediums. So I think that's a great idea. I like that because sometimes you know your kid and you can feel something's not quite right, but they can't seem to get the words out. So that's a really good advice. I wanted to check in about adult feelings around some of these because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that active shooter drills scare me too. You know, when I watch my kids go into school, I can feel if I, let it run with it, I can really feel very nervous and worried about them throughout the day. So I'm wondering, when is it appropriate to say, that scares me too, and here's what I'm doing about that?
Yeah, I love the idea of letting kids know that adults aren't perfect or like can handle everything with no problem. I think it's just being real, like, yep, I also feel worried about that. And your point, Allison, about then following up this, and here's what I do with it. Here's how I cope with it. So I might be saying like, as we were talking about how I teach my kids when they can take breaths, like my example was me, like when I'm feeling worried or stressed at work, I just take a moment and have a breath. So it could be like when I hear about scary news, or because I know that at work, my work today, we had a drill or we learned about what to do if there's a disaster. And at first I thought that was scary. And then I remembered that I'm preparing, that I can do these activities to feel better. And there's a connection. Like we don't have all of the answers. None of us has all the answers. And each of us has some tools that we can use.
Definitely. And I think that's smart to bring some of those topics up because you think you may be hiding things, or a lot of times I think I'm hiding feelings, and my son will say, "Are you going to smile today?" And I'm like, "Oh, like I thought I had you fooled." So I like the idea of sharing why maybe your behavior is a little bit off too. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit shorter with you than I normally would be. I had something happen to me today. I like that idea. When we talk to children about emotions, I like the idea of what made you happy today, what made you excited. Is it okay to normalize getting in trouble? Did you get in trouble today? Did anybody ask you to stop doing anything, just to make it a more comfortable topic to bring up? Because sometimes it can be kind of scary to tell your parents, even if someone hollered at you on the playground to stop doing something. Is it okay to kind of normalize that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think, normalizing those conversations, recognizing, that sometimes we make mistakes or we had big feelings and we did something that, we felt bad about later, or someone said that we shouldn't have done. Absolutely. We all do those things, even as adults, and so making them feel safe and comfortable. And then, encouraging that conversation to lead into, what do you think you might have done differently? You had those big feelings. What do you think you might do next time you have feelings like that? Or, what's another way that you might have managed that situation? Again, it just opens it up, normalizes it, and it feels very validating. And of course, that's kind of been the message throughout all of this, is just offering that validation, allowing the kids and ourselves to feel seen and heard really goes a long way.
Yeah, we know that emotional validation is one of the strongest things we can do to help our kids be resilient. So that's, research shows us that having an adult that validates our young ones' feelings makes a huge difference in their ability to work through and come out well and healthy and stable. And I was just thinking, like, the more that we normalize any kind of check-in, not just when there's something going on, the easier it becomes then as the routine, and that it's not weird to talk about a feeling or doing something to feel better or calm. It was, it's a big job as a parent, thinking that we're always an example. And sometimes I think, like, that means that I can't mess up, but actually the example is that when I do mess up, my example then is to say that I messed up and just put it out there. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. or I wish I'd handled that a different way. And letting kids know that they don't have to be perfect. We talked about that stress that kids feel to meet their parents' expectations or to present in a certain way. And when we show the chinks in our own armor, we give them permission to not be so stressed about it.
Yes, that's a great point. And when you validate the child's feelings, can it be as simple as, I see that you are really angry right now, or you feel, so just a simple sentence like that. It does, in my own experience as a mom, it really does make a difference.
100%. Just we don't have to fix it, right? We don't have to change their feeling. We don't have to fix it for them as a parent. That's our instinct, right? We want to fix it for them. We don't want them to feel sad or angry. But we can just be there with them in those feelings. Yeah, you've got some big feelings today. Today was really hard for you. You're feeling really sad, or you're really angry about that. And just leave it at that. Sometimes just that is enough. Just knowing that they can feel seen, and that it's okay. We don't have to change the feelings.
And when the child maybe has a reaction that, leaves their body, let's say they're screaming, maybe they throw something, maybe they punch something or a sibling or someone, or they say a hurtful statement. Is that something, I would assume we don't want to discourage something, but coach them in different ways that they can express that next time, or is it just sort of dependent on the age of the child?
First we want to have a safe environment. So you have to intervene immediately if somebody's being hurt, if they're hurting themselves. And we also know, especially with younger kids, that you're not going to reason with them in the moment, right? Like their logic brain is turned off. So kind of asking somebody having a tantrum or who's, kind of having such an extreme emotional reaction in that moment to do it differently isn't necessarily going to work. So I love that idea of debriefing afterwards, and talking about it. And for the most part, I don't think any young one wanted to express their emotions that way. Like, yeah, I wouldn't choose, like, I wanted to break something. Like I feel out of control and I didn't know what to do with it. And then later, when I look back, I wish I hadn't broken the thing.
And is it maybe okay to say, I know that screaming feels really good when you've been angry in the past, grab a pillow and scream into it, or squeeze the pillow or squeeze a stuffed animal, something along those lines to help get some of those feelings out or to regulate?
Absolutely. Encouraging, safe expression, and expression that just feels like it fits. Yeah, we don't have to scream at other people. If we need to scream and that feels good and that's what gets it out of us, we can do that into a pillow or, whatever other situation feels accessible in that moment.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if we have another question in here, and I'm not sure, Kristyn, if you're reading this as well. I'm going to read it word for word, and I'm hoping you guys will understand it better than I am here. So it says, can you speak to the adult on the spectrum and experience? Does that make sense?
Can you say it again for me?
She said, can you speak to the adult on the spectrum and experience? So if you'd like to expand upon that question a little bit, that might be helpful. I just want to make sure we're answering exactly what you are asking there. And it looks like somebody else shared a resource for mental health in the question. So I will be sure.
I'm looking at, can you speak to the adult on the spectrum and experience? Well, I'm going to take a guess at the question. And I wonder if we're talking about working, having relationship with people who might be on the autism spectrum, if that's what this question's about.
So she actually did expand on that trauma through neighbors treating her with disrespect.
Yeah. It's super difficult. I don't know if I have good answers for that, because I think that when we're talking about kind of navigating world with people with specific disorders, that we're talking about working with somebody who has a specialty in that area. So I apologize that I'm not going to answer that question very well. But I think when I get past the point where it seems like attempting a normal conversation, right? So we're attempting to like talk to a neighbor and say, hey, like, I want to check in with you about this thing. Like that's the ideal world where we can talk to a neighbor and let them know what their behavior or their language is like. And unfortunately, we don't control our neighbors and how they might talk to us. So some of that then might be changing our own interactions and the way that we're kind of around or experiences. And it might mean some limitations that we wish we didn't have. Like I can think of, there are kids in the neighborhood, and that wasn't the interactions I wanted my kids to have. And since those other kids weren't going to change their behaviors, or their parents weren't going to put different limits on it that felt better for me, it meant that we were a little more aware of who was outside when we decided to go outside. So we figure out what we can control. We do our best to communicate with care, and then we have to make decisions about what we might change in order for our own safety and well-being.
Okay, I think that was very well said after your intro there. When you have maybe a child whose feelings have been hurt, or somebody has said something hurtful to your child, do you have a piece of advice other than our sticks and stones kind of maybe your bones? Is there something else we could do to help them understand that?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm going to go right back to validating, because I think that old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, it just isn't true. Like that was kind of our old school way of saying, kind of suck it up, buttercup. And that's not helpful. Like words do hurt, and just acknowledging like that was hurtful. That hurt your feelings. That made you feel sad. You wished that your friend didn't say that, and just kind of reflecting that back. And to Lisa's point earlier, we don't always get to fix it. And sometimes it's just being present and acknowledging, like, I know that hurt. I know you're feeling hurt. I know you wanted that to be different.
Okay, and I wanted to share also, there is a resource that was shared in the question. So I will be sure that Elise and Kristyn, you both have a chance to look at it and reflect on that. And if that is a really good resource to share with people, I'd be happy to include it in our follow-up email. I know there are some questions also, it looks like, about medication and medicating children maybe who are having some behavioral health issues. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're really not here to talk about the medication side of this today. That would be a different resource. Am I right on that?
Yeah, you would definitely want to have a conversation about medication, whether or not that's the right fit for your child, and the symptoms that they're experiencing with their primary care physician, their pediatrician. That would be a good place to kind of start those conversations.
I would add that as well, that when we start talking about whether a child might need medication, or whether that's appropriate or something that's right for your child and your family, that is through a full evaluation with a professional who's trained to diagnose those conditions and prescribe medications.
Perfect. And if you do seek therapy for your child, I know that sometimes that conversation can be a little bit hard to explain to a child. Why am I going to a therapist? Because sometimes they might hear something in school, or there might be a stigma around that. I've sort of gotten around it by saying, we have providers for every part of our body, including our brain. And then is that kind of the road you should take, you should start down?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on age and kind of what the level of understanding is. I think if the kid or the child is pretty young, 7 or younger, just, this is someone that we can talk to, especially when we have big worries or big feelings, sometimes having someone else to talk to or share things with can be helpful. And as the child matures and, has a better level of understanding, we go see our doctor, if we had a headache every day, we'd go and see our doctor and talk to them and ask them to help us with, figuring out why our head hurts every day and helping us to stop that. And, if we have worries every day and, we can't sleep because our brain is worrying so much, we want to talk to someone about that too, right? And really address that in the same manner.
Okay, excellent. And as parents or caregivers, if you are working with a child who does have big emotions, maybe it's frequent and maybe it's infrequent, but their behavior is something that, like you said, like we're bordering on an unsafe environment, let's say. How do we address that out loud in the moment without threatening to take away screen time or other consequences? Is there something else you can say, or are consequences the best way to go?
I think there's lots of schools of thought on that. Working with a therapist, specifically that, specializes in children, or even talking with, resources or supports in the school system can help. Oftentimes there's a counselor or social worker available, and they might be able to provide some resources as well. Again, there's different schools of thought, around positive reinforcement versus, punishment or discouraging behavior through consequences. Simple reminders might be helpful, and again, if things are escalating, you probably want to question, how's this going to land in this moment, right? And just focus on safety in the moment, making sure that everyone's safe, making sure your child's safe, getting through that, and then probably having a discussion later outside of that escalated moment about kind of what's the results of that. Makes more sense than having that discussion in the moment when no one's thinking rationally.
If a safety concern comes up, more than sporadically, that might be an indication that you could use some more help. Because working with someone who's experienced and skilled in treating children who have behavioral difficulties and emotional challenges is going to have ways that are evidence-based to change that so that people can be safe. So, while, every once in a while somebody might, throw something, if that's happening routinely, or if people are getting hurt in the household, I would say that is a big indicator that you need some additional support from a mental health professional.
Okay. And going back to how we talked about scheduling worry time, does it make sense to also schedule time to help maybe avoid worry or avoid some of the things that come with anxiety? So hunger maybe what could lead to anger or anxiety, I imagine, or after school maybe a child needs a walk or some exercise or some kind of like a downtime even. Are there things that you can do to help alleviate some of those feelings of anxiety and stress before they happen?
Mostly just making sure that those needs are met, right? Hungry, tired, again, we can't always prevent those things. I think probably every kid comes home from school just like starving, right? And so recognizing that you want to meet those needs, especially before you have any, tough conversations or ask them how they're feeling. Let's take care of those basic needs. And then check in, recognizing that if those needs are not met, it can definitely contribute to, anxiety or difficult feelings.
I think we can notice if there's certain times of day or certain situations that are likely to derail how things are going. So, the more we get used to that. So again, if it's like after school, like let's put a plan in place after school. And as Elise was talking about those mindfulness and grounding exercises, and like that's what we do. Like that's almost like scheduling the time to not worry. So in as much as like you can't force yourself, like you're not allowed to worry from 4 o'clock to 4:30, Like you could say that at 4 o'clock is your guided meditation time, or, after you get home from school and get a snack, that's the time that you're going to do your guided meditation on YouTube, or that's journaling time. So scheduling some of those pleasurable activities, some of the grounding and mindful activities, and then also knowing that in our back pockets are always the ones that we can do in any moment when we start feeling that we're not in control and we're not connected to the present moment.
And if you're noticing maybe my child seems to have an issue around this time every night, maybe jotting down or journaling to see what's happening to lead to that, and so you can intervene with something other than a reaction.
Right.
Okay. I'm trying to see if there are any more questions here. Is there anything else either one of you would like to add or like to say? Okay. So I wanted to just confirm that we, at all of our primary care practices, all of our pediatrics practices, and all of our OB-GYN practices, there is help. There is a resource for behavioral health in all of those places, correct? And the best idea is
Right.
either start with your primary care, make an appointment. You can do so online. You can do so by calling. You can probably request them on MyChart as well. But being able to say, I would like to speak with a behavioral health or health therapist or a resource in the office. And you actually do see people virtually too, correct? So you really could see people from all over the area or do or practice typically. How does that work for you guys?
They'd have to have a provider with us. So, whether that's a primary care provider or a pediatrician or OB-GYN, but yeah, they'd have to have a provider with us if they're going to be utilizing one of those services.
Okay.
They can, so somebody who does not have a provider with IHA Medical Group can access mental health services for themselves or their children at the Trinity Outpatient Behavioral Health. That's the 734-786-2301 number that was on the last slide, and that will be in the handout. So you can refer yourself to those services.
Excellent. That's a great resource. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, well, with that, I think we have gotten through all of the questions. We appreciate you both taking the time to share your expertise on this important topic.